Hello everyone. Hi. So I am Barath, staff product security and AI engineer at Adobe. A quick show of hands. How many of you have used any AI tools, be it ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot, without your security team blessing it at your work, right? Yeah, it's so many folks, right? So I think that's what I'm going to really talk about. This talk is not going to talk about which model is best or which AI tool is best. It's really about how well-meaning security teams keep failing to adopt AI securely and what actually we can do about it. Just a quick disclaimer, most of the talk is most on my personal views and public research, not related to Adobe. Please don't interpret as an endorsement or official statement by Adobe. And if I reference any tool by name, it is just to illustrate the real risk, not to promote or criticize that. Let me paint a picture. You probably have lived with this. Tell me if any of these characters feels very similar, right? You have your analyst who figured out this new AI tool which kind of cuts your triage time from 40 minutes to 4 minutes. So they are trying to use it every day, copying the live incident data to the new tool. They are not trying to create a problem, right? They are trying to do their job well, and they are not alone. And you have your senior most engineer in your organization who kind of blocks every AI pilot for the last 18 months. Every new AI tool is a liability to the organization. The default answer is no. And they have the credibility to make that stick with the org, right? Because they are seniors in the group, they have that authority to make it stick with the leadership. And you have the leadership on one side, wherein they promise their board of a AI roadmap for the next quarter. The pressure for visible wins is very real, right? It falls downfall very fast. And you have your legal team who kind of shockingly figured out that there is this ChatGPT is used or some other new AI tool is used during a routine audit. Nobody told them, but the meeting which might follow after that might be unpleasant, right? Because they might be shocked to know that this new AI tool is already been in use. And every one of these personas is acting rationally, right? Nobody is wrong in this whole picture, but together they have created shadow IT, stalled initiatives, and real compliance exposure. The missing piece is mostly the cultural alignment. That's what we're gonna really try addressing. I want to really touch on this interesting 6 AI failure patterns, agent failure patterns. Before I walk through them, one stat that frames everything is this C.H.A.N.G.E 2025 Europe Union research report, which found out that 83% of IT organizations are already using AI at work, and only 31% have a formal AI policy. That's a 52-point gap of unsanctioned AI activity with no guardrails within enterprises, right? And talking about one of the, starting with shadow AI, right? Your best people in the company are mostly likely to find workarounds with any other new AI tools. And you have, as an organization, you have zero visibility of what data is leaving your organization, and most dangerous because it's invisible. It's happening at scale, right? And there is also this concept of productivity mirage, wherein with this advancement of AI, a lot of developers save a lot of time. Say somebody saves 10 hours a week because of using AI for more productivity, but those 10 hours vanish. Nobody told them where the 10 hours needs to be invested back, right? In the engineering world, the AI doesn't eliminate bottlenecks. It just moves upstream. Developers now start to ship faster, but the bottleneck now goes to the PRQ, right? Where you have a lot of PRQs and it kind of backs up. The real individual gains does not show up as a team output. The net throughput remains the same because you have a lot of PR in the bottleneck. And sometimes like you have this senior engineer veto wherein they are kind of like we talked about, they're skeptical about any new things. The problem is like those might be legitimate concerns, right? But that shouldn't become a blanket bans for everything which happens in the org. It should be converted as safety requirements. Sometimes skepticism is an asset, but obstruction isn't an asset. And we also have this middle managers who are caught between showing A events for this quarter and from the above, and I'm not doing this from the bottom where the real developers does not have the right tools, and they set the expectations too wrong, right? This breaks people who kind of work from an individual contributor perspective. And always this complaint scramble is there, like legal gets always looped in after an incident and not before deployment. It's kind of avoidable, but that's the very common situation we see in enterprises where they brought in after the fact in some cases, right? And the reversion is something like a lot of organizations start with high confidence. They make a wrong call in terms of going from enthusiastic adoption and to near zero within months. It's more on the trust once broken, you can't rebuild, it's very hard to rebuild the trust, right? Let me talk about from a developer perspective. If you're an engineer or organization, those numbers are kind of real at the top, right? Netscope found out data sent to Gen.E apps are increasingly 30% increasing in a single year, right? That's going to keep on growing going forward too. And cyber events telemetry report says 27% of corporate data entered into AI tools are sensitive, and 98% comes through personal accounts, right? That's very much scary. Like people use personal AI tools at work. And most of these data entry happens through copy paste, right? Not file uploads. That's a traditional way where that's kind of one of the biggest DLP strategy gap, right? Where traditionally you might do file classification and tagging, copy paste bypasses all of it, right? If you are in ChatGPT, the tendency is to just copy paste there rather than doing a file upload. Otherwise your DLP or your EDR might catch it. So those two screenshots mostly reflects, like, let's say you have Cursor or Cloud Code, right? Those are very popular coding assistants today. If somebody downloads this from their personal account, they do have to make sure, like, they have to obviously have an enterprise license. In case if they mistakenly have a personal account, these are certain hidden configurations which developers have to be aware of, wherein they have to make sure they do not share data, turn on the privacy mode. If they use Cloud Code, they have to make sure they don't toggle that to be on, so you don't really pass your sensitive enterprise data to the AI model providers, right? Obviously, like if you have an enterprise offering, admin can configure all of this, but we have to also make sure this is really configured on the enterprise side with your admins, right? If you are in a big enterprise, if you have few admins who kind of monitor the enterprise tool of these platforms, you have to make sure they really configure this tool for safety. And let's talk about the change framework itself, right? As I mentioned on the previous slide, research across thousands of organizations shows that a single biggest problem of agent readiness isn't technology at all. It's the culture. This is the framework which addresses that. A quick credit, this change acronym and structure was developed by Nufer Gasper at Super Intelligent. I've tried adapting each pillar to security team specifically, and kind of these 6 pillars, each one of them map directly to the 6 failure patterns we saw on the previous slide. Let's look at communication, right? Communication is something kills shadow eye. When people understand the why and they feel safe, they stop going around the process which is existing in the org, right? And there is this human oversight. when AI is there, it's an important to answer who is accountable for what it does, right? Most of the thing, most of them becomes, most of them is kind of, we have to make sure somebody approves it, somebody denies a kind of responses. And attitude is something, how you get your skeptics into building guardrails instead of blocking them. It could be your senior leaders, it could be your senior members in your group. And network explains why the CIO email or CEO email does not work and what actually does, right? Governance is nothing but a fast path approval wherein it shouldn't be a blocker. You have your legal team, they shouldn't stop you from doing innovation. It should be more at the speed of innovation, not complaints timelines. So I think the last piece is enablement, which means you train people for the actual job where not just writing prompts. I think few years back people said prompt engineering and all that. Now things are constantly shifting now. We need to find different ways to enable developers too. Let's look at communication, right? I think we talked about the most common failure in AI rollouts isn't technical. Leadership never addresses this job security question, right? Leaving that unaddressed and people go around the process, correct? The AI, I think this really is like coming up with an AI manifesto of a one-page manifesto, right? I have seen examples in the wild where certain CEOs like Shopify CEO or Duolingo's CEO publicly stated that AI proficiency is required for the job. They came out and publicly announced whoever does not have AI proficiency, they might be out of the job, right? And they neither nudged, but they are upfront, very frank about how they are going forward, right? I think that kind of a thought process should be from every leadership too. There should be more directness, so employees will not quietly undermine adoption. They don't undermine adoption because, right, they wanted to have a self-preservation. So we have to make sure we promote that. And be honest about uncertainty, right? In certain times, we overpromise with AI in place. We say we will do 80% reduction. If we can't really back it up, set the bar little bit, set the bar more realistically. If you have a real 30% improvement, since you set a 80% reduction, your actual improvement does not stand. You still land as a failure because you set your bar too high, which is so unexpected bar. And define your boundaries, right? What data is off limits? When we use this AI coding assistance or any ChatGPT tool, all your developers or engineers in your org should know what data they can enter and cannot enter, right? And what needs human sign off and what does not need human sign off. Those things really need to be put on paper where people can read about it. It's not assuming can I click this to approve or doesn't approve, right? It should be part of the formal document, which can be a simple one-pager manifesto. And if possible, this might be a bit controversial in some sense, like if you can commit job safety in writing, and also tell them how they can reinvest their saved time, right? Obviously, with the coding assistance now taking a lot of things, your complex logic becomes like a 10-hour coding logic now becomes a 5-minute logic. If you send it to Opus, it kind of complexly solves every problem, right? Then you save this 10 hours. You should really tell them how they can reinvest in deeper investigations or any other additional research, right? That should be well written, documented too. And let's talk about human oversight, right? The next big thing is a lot of deployments get stalled, not because who's responsible when AI gets it wrong, right? People are feared when AI makes a mistake, who's kind of accountable? If you can't answer that clearly before you deploy, you shouldn't really deploy, right? If you can answer it clearly, most serious objections disappear. For agentic workflows, this question becomes more urgent. WASP calls this prompt injection as a top risk, and MITRE Atlas framework has documented cases where prompt injection propagates through RAG pipelines. I think this 3-tier autonomy model is something you should try to consider at your org, right? Wherein you start in a more more sandbox state. You can have a AI tool, and you should make sure that AI tool is just used for enrichment and added classification, but not, it cannot take real actions, right? It has to go through these 3 tiers. And the next tier is supervised state, wherein you started trusting your sandbox state. Now you're moving to a supervised state wherein you can let it perform certain automated actions, not complex sensitive actions, but now you're doing you are now in a supervised state where you're a bit more comfortable, not too comfortable, handing off everything to the AI, but you still do this pilot for a period, for a 30-day period, or until you feel comfortable this sandbox is proven, a supervised state is proven. And then you go to this last autonomy tier, which is this full blast, right? You're gonna give AI the full control of it. Obviously, this is something you call it, I'm fully agent ready. I'm 100% agent ready, right? Where everything AI is doing. You give it a task, it kind of goes to the from the drafting state to the sending state, it kind of takes care. You just do a random audit once in a while, just to ensure that things are going in the right way, right? Apart from that, you have given agent all the handoff. I think the next one is really about attitude. I think these 3 phrases really gets it right. Most of the time, the wrong approach is you telling your organization or your employees, let's get on board or get out of this approach, right? Like you'd start proving this, the data proves, but AI works, can we start doing this effort? I think the engineers who push back on these kind of concepts aren't wrong, right? They understand the risks better than anyone. That carrying is an asset, not a problem when they say something is wrong. I think the conversation that ideally will work when you approach with your senior managers who kind of start debating on AI technologies and all that is, if you use these 4 words, instead of having this misalignment, if you tell them, help me make this safe. We have this new AI tool which we are planning to adopt. Can you tell me how can we make it safe, right? Those might be more engaging, and you can let, they start asking the right questions after that. They could ask like what might be the data this might touch, what's the rollback strategy. Then you get to convert that to a safety requirements. I think given your loudest critique in your company becomes your credible safety advocate, right? Work with them, not around them, right? In case somebody denies, you have to still make sure you're gonna bring them on board so that they take the responsibility and they help you design safety requirements for the platform they said, right? I think the next one is network. I'm gonna say like there was some research wherein a well-funded AI initiative sponsored by the executives, and there is a CIO email which really talks about great about those initiatives, and we have a whole playbook, died within few months. But where they saw a research wherein a team with none of them, they did not get executive sponsor and all of that, but they had a 70% adoption in just 6 or 7 weeks, right? The difference is one practitioner who had a very good practitioner showing peers what worked and what did not work. So people don't change behavior because of a company-wide email. They change when somebody they trust shows something that's very useful and very practical, right? Champions are people your team actually listens to, not the org chart in most cases. If you have org chart, I think we need to build champions around these capabilities. They say, I tried this, here's where it worked. And finding those people is critical, so you could make sure like, and you can also make sure those individuals are recognized in team meetings for what they contribute, right? And the last part is builders make safe to AI in production, right? They are the real builders. They build integration patterns, data handling rules. We build a lot of internal security guardrails to distribute to developers. So the part of our job is also to make sure that gets widely adopted, and we need that community to be strong. They might be your former skeptics, but they know how to what might be the best guardrails they can build for the developer community there. I think I want to really touch on governance, right? Governance is something every organization struggles. It can be damaging in two different ways, right? In one state, there will be no governance. Everything goes to production without somebody even legally reviewing it or privacy even reviewing it. That's one part of a damaging stream. Whereas this other part of damaging governance is there is a 6-month approval process for any new tool, right? Both is really damaging for the org. I think there's something should be considered of 48-hour or whichever is more appropriate, a short time window of sandbox approval, wherein when you go to a legal or a privacy, it should be little bit more faster. It shouldn't stop your innovation, because right now innovation is the key where people are trying to develop faster. Your governance should be around the fast innovation. You can have a fast approval with conditions, not saying blanket bans, but having fast approval with conditions makes it much more stronger. You can still trust the governance process, but still continue to innovate. I think the last part is enablement. Most AI training today stops at prompting. If you're good at prompting, you start to develop a lot of sophisticated tools, and those started to become table stakes. A year back, prompting used to be something so crazy, and developer were, oh, how do we prompt this better, right? The real shift is how you're now the trend is how your team members can become agent managers. That's the real skill set, right? Nobody is formally training for that yet. It's starting to boom. And critically, your team needs to have some protected time to build that muscle. If you're buried in existing workload by trying to prompt and do certain vibe coded projects, it may not really help downstream, right? I think things are constantly changing. Everybody is going into this evolving agentic world. I think this three setup, supervise, escalate, validate. When I say supervise, it's really about recognize when your AI output is wrong, when it is hallucinating or drifting, right? That's the agent manager. Agent manager, when the agent runs, you should know what it does and what it is not supposed to do. Do you need to really look at the log traces? And they should really have a good understanding of how can we tune this agent better. Your team must know what good actually looks like, right? What's the normal flow of process, and is the agent doing the right thing at the right point? And when you see exactly which signals, you have to escalate when something goes wrong. And if it needs a human sign off, you have to make sure it really triggers a human sign off at the point, right? I think the last point is when you have this time saved through AI, and we talked about it, you should use it for more deeper investigations, threat hunting, skill growth, not headcount justification, right? That should be like a common synonym with agent managers. People have to adapt to a different skill level, call it agent managers too. I think we are coming to the end of the slide. I want to really make sure you take this form, right? One is culture beats technology. So diagnose the human dynamics before buying any other AI tool, right? Deploy an AI manifesto. It can be single one page. Try to address the job security fears. Make sure how do they save the invested time, the saved time. Where should the saved time should go? If you can clearly address them, that's going to be a big difference for them. Understand the 3-tier autonomy model. Don't go start from production, right? You can't use AI agents directly on production. You have to go through stages. Promotion is earned unless you really test it out in sandbox and supervised state, and then you go for a fully agentic mode, right? And try to turn your skeptics, if your org has a lot of skeptics who kind of disagree on things, make them as your safety requirement guard, right? Help them make the safe. They're gonna be your safety instinct, right? Every time you can reach out to them. You have the best people in the team who is a little bit skeptical about AI, but they can help you out. and try to build this, build champions around and build networks so that that's a peer capability, right? Top-down mandate does not really work in a modern organization. You need to have this community-driven, builder-driven community, and try to have this governance process bit more faster in your org. If you have a legal process or a privacy process which is more time-stretching, have something which is more practical for this innovative world, right? You can have a fast path approval with conditions, and then you start to build more safety requirements after that. Like I said, I think prompt engineering concept is long gone. Now we have to make sure we should start getting ready for this agentic agent managers world. And a lot of articles, public articles really starting to talk about recently. This is more on you should make sure like get this right, and the technology deliver will be more promising than ever, right? I think that's about it. I'm kind of little bit over time. I can take if you have any questions offline. Thanks for your time. Thanks for attending.